We have, starting on my left, Mayor Leffingwell with the City of Austin, Mayor Guerrero, City of San Marcos, Mayor Webster, Kyle, and Mayor Powell from Cedar Park. And we would like to start the conversation here with, I think, the thing that's on the interest of most of the people here and probably you too. We have a lot of businesses that in clean energy technology that's looking to either start up or expand their businesses in this region of Texas. And so the question to you is, why should they come to your city? Why are people coming to your city? What are the attractions and the advantages of starting or expanding a business in your city? And I'm going to go from left to right, and start with you, Mayor Powell.
Thank you very much, Roger. And can everyone hear me okay?
I think so.
Well, thank you very much for having me. Again, my name is Matt Powell, and I'm the mayor of Cedar Park. If anyone doesn't know where Cedar Park is, we're the immediate northwest suburb of Austin. I know all of these gentlemen, so it's a pleasure to share the stage with them. And it's kind of fun when you ask that question, why should they choose your city? Because it was in vogue for a long time for all of the local cities to kind of fight over things and to point out our vast differences. And what we found is that long term that wasn't really helping us. We've been able to forge a much more regional identity. Now, don't get me wrong, if you've got a great business move to town, Cedar Park's going to be your best bet over these guys. There's no question about it. But again, I think that whereas the focus used to be, we're clearly better. Every one of these cities and all of Central Texas offers so many advantages, and I think we're all drinking from wells that other people have dug. So we're fortunate to be where we are. Cedar Park itself is, for the second year in a row, is the fourth fastest growing city in the United States, and I don't say that like yay, because it creates tremendous challenges for us. When you have that much growth, keeping in front of things with infrastructure and road construction and making sure the water's where it needs to be is very challenging and very expensive. However, through some very focused policies on balancing our commercial and our residential, we've been able to kind of stay out in front. I've never been one to say, to point out our big differences from Austin, because none of our cities would be what they are today without Austin. Austin is clearly the hub here. It is with its entertainment, with a great business environment, with good leadership. It has quickly become one of the destination cities in the country. The challenge for us as a suburban community is to figure out how to capitalize that, but still have some differences. With us, our focus for the last several years has been to maintain a lower tax, lower regulation environment. If you want a great French restaurant or an international airport, I can't help you there. Luckily, Austin can. But what we can offer is the idea that we're going to incentivize businesses. We're going to help them thrive. We made what a lot of people consider a controversial decision many years ago to opt out of Capital Metro, but we've kept all of that money and we've invested it in businesses moving to town and in our own infrastructure, in our park system, and our road system, in things like Cedar Park Center, which is now an entertainment destination. And through that, we've been able to, we're just named one of the best small cities in the United States and one of the most livable suburbs in the United States. And I like that we have the advantages of Austin being so close by, but at the same time, we've got a great place for families to live and a lower tax, lower regulation environment for businesses to come in and really thrive. I want you to come in, get your business started, and we'll do our best to just keep government out of the way as much as possible.
Okay. I'm Todd Webster, mayor of Kyle. Kyle is just incredibly positioned to be able to offer prospective businesses, the quality infrastructure that's necessary for development. When it comes to water, we have about, I think we're on a peak day we use 3.2 million gallons of water. We actually own about 6 million gallons per day of water. So we're positioned, with our water infrastructure. We're improving our transportation infrastructure, and we're in the steps of dealing with our expanding our wastewater plant. And I think we're really nicely situated between two wonderful universities We have only 30% of our frontage road on I-35 is actually developed, so we have about 70% of that of I-35's frontage that's available, so it's convenient for transportation. And I think what you're going to find, what business can expect from the city of Kyle is a city and a community that's very anxious and very open to commercial development. He mentioned the balance. One of the issues that we face in Kyle is the majority of the growth has been driven by residential growth. It's spillover growth from Austin. Kyle's a very affordable place to live, maybe one of the most affordable in the region, and at the same time provides a high-quality place to live. And so, our balance is probably 70-30, and so that has we're really going to work hard to try to get our tax base more to a 50-50 balance, like what you were suggesting, because that's going to provide opportunities for folks in our community to have jobs. It's going to, when we talk about economic development, we're talking about we want to recruit manufacturing, large-scale capital investment, to shift that tax base and hopefully maybe get folks from Austin and San Marcos and some other communities to have an opportunity to come to Kyle to work. In terms of clean energy, we have taken a very proactive approach as a city towards water conservation, and we don't own our electric utility, so I really can't speak to that. But we have taken a very serious step to diversify water and water conservation, and we have extreme power, and we have a couple of clean energy businesses in the city already. So, I think if you're out there and you're looking for a place to invest, you're going to see a community that's investing in itself, and you're going to see a city that wants you there and wants to work with you.
Thank you. Mayor Guerrero?
Hi. Good morning. My name is Daniel Guerrero. I serve as the mayor of San Marcos, Texas, which is just about equidistant between the city of Austin and the city of San Antonio, which is one of the greatest values and assets that we have, being immediately along that center point of the corridor along I-35. Certainly some of the things that make San Marcos attractive are very similar to the cities of Kyle, cities of Cedar Park, city of Austin as well, its proximity, but also the workforce, being home to the 5th largest state institution in Texas State University with 37,000 students enrolled, also with a campus in Round Rock, makes us a prime destination for prospects that are looking to bring new opportunities for a community. Also, the presence of Gary Job Corps, which is the largest Job Corps center in the nation, and provides opportunities for young people that are looking for trade opportunities and looking for opportunities to be able to advance their careers and their chances in life as well. Our natural beauty of our community is certainly an asset that we hear on a regular basis, from the spring-fed San Marcos River to over 2,000 acres worth of parkland. One of the areas in which, over these last 4 years, that I've been very proud of is the enhancements that we've seen in our public education as well. Back in May of 2013, our school district did pass an $80 million school bond. A greater portion of that bond was a focus on pre-kindergarten education, which we had lacked for a good period of time. And so over time, we see that as being an additional asset to add to our overall workforce development needs. Some of the challenges that we're seeing from a community standpoint with growth, as Mayor Powell mentioned a while ago, Cedar Park is the 4th fastest growing city in the United States. San Marcos is the fastest growing city in the United States and has been so for the past 2 years. So with that comes significant growth challenges. And fortunately, with good leadership over a period of 10 to 15 years, we've been able to look forward and try to go ahead and make those immediate investments in our transportation infrastructure, which I know Mayor Leffingwell will touch base on as well in regards to Austin-Travis County. But really doing our best to put forth investments in transportation and enhancement of both our water, wastewater, and electric utility capacity, and also working towards enhancing and diversifying our housing stock. Throughout San Marcos, especially being a university community, there is an influx of folks that are coming in and out of San Marcos. Our population is roughly about 60,000, but on any given day it balloons up to easily 70 to 75,000 people. So we have a demand for more single-family housing and a diversification of housing and bringing forth new executive housing stock for San Marcos. And so over these next few years, you'll see a number of new neighborhoods, new units that are coming online that are currently in various stages of our development process to provide housing for residents, for executives, for folks that are looking to bring new jobs to San Marcos. In regards to resources, our natural resources, especially in clean energy, the city itself has taken some very innovative approaches and smart metering. We do distribute our own water and electric through LCRA. We're also one of the only municipalities that has a small portion of ownership in LCRA's brand new Ferguson power plant at 3.25%. And so we're doing our best to try to address a lot of our energy needs, to give our citizens opportunities to be able to invest as well, and being able to bring their costs down and to be able to monitor the overall investment that they're making in their household as well. But I appreciate the invitation to be a part of this conversation today.
Thank you, Mayor Leffingwell.
Okay, I'm Austin Mayor Lee Leffingwell, and I want to echo something Mayor Powell said when he started off. We're really, all the problems that we have are regional problems, and we have to start thinking more and more about them in a regional way. Whether you're talking about transportation or energy conservation, or you're talking about water conservation, all of these things are really regional problems. And I would say, well, I've just heard that we have in our metro area the fastest growing city in the United States, and what was that, the second or third fastest growing? But I would say as a whole, the Austin metro area is the fastest growing major city in the entire country. And that didn't happen entirely by accident, because we have been growing in a way that doubles our population about every 20 to 25 years since we were founded back in 1839. But what we have done is try to, the last few years, improve our economy, and we've done a good job on that. We've been rated by, most recently by Forbes, and by Forbes we're the second best economy for jobs in the future. Milliken had a similar rating for us. We're among the top cities in the entire country as far as our economic growth and job creation, and that's the way I like to think of it, as job creation. So on the fundamentals to serve this growing population, and incidentally Austin right now, every time I look at the numbers, they're a little bit different, but we're about 850,000 in population, the city of Austin. The region is about 1.8 million. The city and the region are growing. In fact, the city of Austin is the 11th largest city in the country right now. We just, about 6 or 8 months ago, passed the city of San Francisco in population. A lot of differences between us and San Francisco. I'm not going to go into them, but basically about the same population. San Francisco is 49 square miles. We're almost 400 square miles. So a whole different set of problems comes into play there. But as far as natural resources, I think Austin has done a good job in preparing for the future. Number one, we secured our water supply back in 1999 when the city of Austin paid up front $100 million for a supply of water from the LCRA from the Colorado Basin of 325,000 acre feet per year for 50 years. So we're using about half that right now. So I think with good conservation practices, which we have already put into place, we're going to be in good shape, at least for the next 50 years. And after that, who cares, really? No, that's a joke. So on water conservation, as I say, we have a pretty sound supply source, but we also put in place, and I was privileged to serve as the chair of the council task force that enacted a conservation program back in 2008. I like to say that we were doing water conservation before it was cool. We were on twice a week outdoor irrigation limitations before anybody was even talking about the drought. So we think we're ahead of that game, and we intend to stay ahead of that game. Renewable energy companies are one of the prime areas that we look to diversify our technology economy, along with life sciences and software companies, and of course the one that's been with us for so long is chip manufacturer. We still incidentally have the biggest state-of-the-art chip manufacturer in the Western Hemisphere in Austin, and that's Samsung. So it's a good, strong base for our economy. But we are seeing more and more our interaction with the cities around us, San Marcos, Cedar Park, Kyle, and Georgetown, and Round Rock. I would say that I have a personal tie. You know, you mentioned the Gary Job Center. That's named after my second cousin. So I have ties there. And also, you mentioned Texas State University as being a large and fast-growing university, and it is. But I would also tell you about a third of the students that go to Texas State commute every day from Austin, Texas. So that brings us to what I think is the most intractable problem of all, and that's solving our transportation program. And I know this event today isn't about that, but I consider that our most serious problem. We're the fourth most congested city in the United States right now, and the way to solve that problem is not solely by building more roads, but of course we need to do that. We need to build a lot more roads, but we also need an efficient, energy efficient, by the way, and effective mass transit system, and that's what I've spent so much time for the last 2 years working on.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Mayors. And Mayor Leffingwell, you make a good segue to the next question. And I'd like to come back and sort of in reverse order, maybe start with Mayor Guerrero. What are the resource issues? You brought up transportation, there's energy, there's water, and so forth. Are there particular resource issues in your area of our region that you're dealing with, and how are you dealing with them? Mayor Guerrero?
Okay. Some of the biggest issues that we're facing in San Marcos, certainly I think Mayor Leffingwell hit it right on the head a moment ago in regards to transportation. But for San Marcos, for Kyle as well, it's water. It's ensuring that we have a good resource supply and a means of being able to distribute water to our residents, our folks that are bringing jobs to our communities, and ensuring that we'll be able to have a good, clean, quality supply for generations to come. That's probably one of the biggest investments that San Marcos has made over the last 20 to 30 years. We were fortunate back in the 80s and 90s to take our community off of groundwater and move from Edwards Aquifer as our primary resource to surface water from Canyon Lake. About 94% of the water that we utilize for San Marcos comes from Canyon Lake. We still have that 6 to 7% that we can pursue and utilize through Edwards Aquifer if we so choose in an emergency, but we've done our very best to try to refrain from doing so because of the endangered species that we have within the San Marcos River and throughout the Edwards Aquifer. Over the last 12 years, we have been working in conjunction with the city of Kyle and other surrounding municipalities to identify new water resources, primarily out of Gonzales County, to go ahead and start working together collectively, as we mentioned a while ago, through regional partnerships and cooperations to secure that water, go ahead and identify the financing mechanisms to lay down the infrastructure necessary to bring that water to each of our communities, and then plan long-term to ensure that our communities have those water resources. Certainly when it comes to electricity as well, I mentioned in my opening statement that over the last few years we've done a tremendous job working with LCRA and being able to implement new smart metering so that our citizens can identify their usage and be able to make behavioral adjustments to how they utilize electricity in their households and in their businesses to be able to keep costs down. Fortunately for us, we have a very low cost of living. We have a wonderful quality of life in San Marcos as well. But continuing to work collectively on water needs is probably been one of our biggest needs going into the future.
Mayor Webster?
Yeah, Kyle has an interesting story related to water. In 2003, we had the entire city it was pretty small, probably had 6,000 to 7,000 people, but we were on one well in the Edwards Aquifer, and we were overpumping the well, and we were being fined. And I think we were overpumping it by 200% or something. It was a really high amount. And so we actually went through a water supply crisis. And so we as a community, we set about a diversification strategy. So we actually get our water. So we have, we get water from GBRA, we get water from Barton Springs Edwards Aquifer, we get water from LCR. We have multiple diversified water sources, and we secured water in Canyon Lake, much in the same way you did. We pay for that, and I think we pay for water that we don't use, and so that we could hold it and make sure that we had it. What we're experiencing right now is, I want to say sticker shock or rate shock. We've been raising water rates, raising our utility rates, and to cover the cost of that and cover the cost of this partnership that Mayor Guerrero was talking about. So part of that diversification strategy was pursuing a regional approach to water development, and we have it's the Hays County Public Utility Authority. That we're members of, along with the City of Buda, and I can't name them all, but there's I mean, it's a good sized group, and we are we're planning on water for the next 50 years. I think we're going to acquire, at least the plan right now is to acquire 35,000 acre feet, of which a third of that would be Kyle's, and then the other partners would have their share of the rest. And it's a really significant and effort. It's really important for the future of all of our cities, for the region. But it's also, it's got upfront costs, in terms of putting the infrastructure in order to move that water from Gonzales County. I think we already have 10,000 acre feet. It's already been permitted. And, I think, when it comes to water, Kyle and San Marcos and Buda and our region are really well prepared. So, in terms of supply. Conservation, Mayor Leffingwell, Kyle modeled our conservation ordinance after the city of Austin, at the same time, because we needed to demonstrate to the Aquifer District that we were serious about conservation in order for them to stop fining us. And so that's what we did. And so I think, it seems like we're always in some stage of drought restriction. And when it comes to watering, that's kind of the situation the community's in. But we're situated really well in supply. Wastewater, which is obviously an environmental concern and a concern when it comes to economic development. I believe we're a little bit behind on that regard. We're about 75% of our capacity right now, and so we really have to take some big steps in the next year to ensure that we have the wastewater infrastructure necessary so that we can accommodate the development that we were already seeing and that we want to see come. Transportation, that is the number one thing. My view is absolutely we need to have a regional mass transit plan and program. It needs to be one that makes sense financially, and that's my community is sort of is in the middle of the debate related to Lone Star Rail and how that's going to be financed and how that's going to work. I think there's support for it, but in concept, but clearly there was pushback in our community related to how that was going to be financed, and so those are things that we have to work through. I think just from a self-interested standpoint, I think one of the best things that Kyle can do to help address the transportation problem is to have a significant employment sector, manufacturing sector, and those folks in Kyle, most of which of our community commute to Austin to work. We need to create an environment in Kyle so those folks can have a family-sustaining job in the city of Kyle. So that's what our focus is, and I think we're well positioned to do that.
Mayor Powell?
Well, let's do City Council 101 real quick. So we talk a lot about core services and the things that cities are supposed to provide. So when we go through our budgeting process, which we're in the middle of right now, I'll ask other council members and I'll ask members in the community to prioritize different city services because we provide a lot of different services. So I say, is the library a core service of the city? Could be argued, yes. If it shut down tomorrow, if the library closed tomorrow, how many people would move out of the city? Some people might get ticked off about it, right? But probably not a lot of people are going to say, no library, I'm out of here, right? We stop maintaining parks. The grass gets long, we stop maintaining parks. Some people are going to move away from that, but it's not your day-to-day life. It's going to have less of an impact. It's a priority. Don't worry, we're not cutting parks out of our budget, but again, it's part of that prioritization. Now you stop funding public safety. All right, well, all of a sudden now you're really starting to change the character of the city. If you don't feel safe outside of your home, you're not going to be volunteering in the community. You're not going to become a productive, happier member of that community. But water's number one. If we shut off the taps tomorrow, the city's a ghost town in a week. Water is the number one concern, and I heard it said once, and I've repeated it many times, so hopefully I can start taking some credit for it, that water is the future currency of Texas. I think that the days of getting back to you can water your lawn 7 days a week, I think they're well and truly over. It's the dynamic in Central Texas has changed. This place is so popular, and we're all here, that even when the skies open up someday and the lakes fill up, and I know that we're praying for that every day, I can't imagine our city ever leaving. I remember it was a bit of a shock years ago when we went to mandatory 2 day a week. Now we're on mandatory 1 day a week, and hopefully we can stay there for a little while. But I think that the days of just opening up the taps are over, and that's okay. Our citizens have a really good understanding of that. It creates some budgeting challenges because we base our water sales on economies of scale, and if you sell less water, guess what? Your unit price goes up because the hard costs don't really change. So it's created a challenge. However, much like Austin back in the 90s, we got our water reservations from LCRA long term. The good news is we're not going to run out of water, but we do need to manage it better now than we ever have before, and we're doing that in several ways. First of all, we've tried to buck that trend that government loves why build something once when you can build it twice at twice the price. We have tried to go in with other partners, again, to recapture some of those economies of scale. When we did our wastewater infrastructure, Austin needed some in Northwest Austin, Round Rock needed some. We went in together. We purchased a plant together and built pipes together, and because the pipes don't really care what city limits that they're in. And then the same thing on the water infrastructure. Round Rock, Leander, and Cedar Park all have water reservations out of Lake Travis. Why build 3 pipes? Why go through all the right-of-way? Why tear up all these roads? We built 1 pipe, just built it a little bigger. Built 1 plant in Cedar Park, and we help process it for everybody. And in doing so, have saved tens of millions of dollars. And again, that's what your businesses do. That you're not looking for the most expensive way. You're looking for efficiencies. You're looking for economies of scale. You're looking for ways to keep your hard costs down, and we've been able to do that. I think that because of that, and a lot of other cities having a similar view toward that, Central Texas is in a really good position, despite the fact that we officially this year have hit the drought of record. This is the worst drought in recorded history. And even though we're all tightening our belts and not running our sprinklers as much, you don't see the mass exodus from here. And I think we're very fortunate to do that. But it hasn't happened by accident. It takes a lot of planning.
Thank you. And I'm going to follow up with the question on communication and coordination in a moment. But I do want to let the audience know that after this, we're going to open it up to the audience for questions. We have microphones on either aisle, and if you would just come up to those microphones, we will open it up to questions to the panel from the audience. Mayor?
Yeah,
Mayor,
I just
Mayor
want to
Leffingwell.
follow up on that statement. Obviously, we have to, the water conservation idea, which we've basically pioneered, we've got one of the strongest programs in the entire country for a city that's not in the desert. But when we established our program back in 2008, before the drought began, as I said, our focus was to eliminate waste and inefficiency. So after a lot of study and a lot of input, we decided 2 days a week, whether there's drought or not, will sustain your landscape. But if we go to once a week, which we're in right now, we're in that restriction right now, on a long-term basis, if we continue that, we're going to start to lose our tree canopy, and our landscape is going to dramatically change. So definitely we want to get back to something that's sustainable as soon as we can, as soon as we reach certain trigger levels in the reservoir lakes, Buchanan and Travis. But we never want to go back to the good old days where you're watering 7 days a week. We still want to be efficient and effective in the way we do it. Why? Even if there's not a drought, and the drought will be over someday. People remember back in the 50s when the lakes filled up virtually overnight. And they were lower than they are today and virtually overnight. with a significant weather event, they just filled up. And that's going to happen sooner or later. But why this is really necessary is our population growth is going to continue at this pace, and that is going to put demands, even with a good supply and even with a good delivery system. We estimate that by 2040, the Central Texas region will be home to 4 million people, a little over double what we have right now. So that is definitely going to stress all of our infrastructure, whether you're talking about water or electricity, or maybe we can get into transportation a little bit at some point. I also want to touch briefly, we are one of the few municipalities, large municipalities in the country, that the city owns the electric utility. So back in 2007, I believe it was, Roger was the general manager of Austin Energy at that time, and basically under his leadership generated a transition plan to have more renewable energy in our portfolio, and there were several elements to it. We established a goal of reaching 35% renewable in our generation portfolio by 2020. Of that, 100 megawatts would be from solar power, and that has since been up to 200 megawatts of solar. And it also included 800 megawatts of conservation. A lot of people didn't think we could do that by 2020. We've already done it. And by the way, we've already reached 35% renewables in our portfolio. We're reaching the point where if we increase too much beyond that amount, then we're not going to have sufficient base power in our generation capacity. And that means power that's available all the time, whether the wind is blowing or the sun is shining. You're going to have a certain percentage. I don't know what exactly that number is, but that has to be there. And so the transition beyond that is going to depend on future technological developments that will come in time, but they're not here yet.
Thank you very much. What I'd like to do now is ask, without any particular order, about regional cooperation and communication. All of you have mentioned at one time or another the water issue, the transportation issue. There are probably other issues. I know all of you know each other and you talk, but the audience doesn't know what all is going on. And talk a bit about the importance of the regional and what you're doing and what maybe perhaps we could do better in terms of a region, in terms of communications, cooperation, and regional planning. In any particular order, Mayor Webster.
You know, what's interesting, it's a great question. The HCPUA, I'm not sure most people in either of our communities even know it exists, right? I mean, I'm certainly the newest person, in this group. I mean, I've only been mayor for 3 months.
We were hazing him back.
Yeah, so I have a very fresh, and I know you're in campaign. Some of you might be campaigning now, but I'm just, had a very long and drawn-out campaign with a runoff, and so I've talked to literally thousands and thousands of people, and the number one issue that was brought up to me was, why is my water rate higher than my electricity rate? Why am I paying more for water? Now, of course, they're paying for water and wastewater and trash collection, but they're looking at it as, this bill is bigger than my utility bill, and I don't understand why. And it does speak to a communication issue. I mean, it's a simple equation for me. I mean, it's the scarcity. It's driving the cost of water up, and we've got a natural gas boom, and certainly the renewable energy, all these things that are being created that are certainly assisting statewide, in meeting our energy supply demand. We have a really affordable electricity through the Pedernales Electrical Cooperative. That's who provides our electricity. We don't have a city-owned utility, but clearly from a communication standpoint, I mean, it was really poignant. Every single time I knock on a door, talk to somebody, that was what they were talking about. Why is my water rate higher than my electric rate? And it speaks to something I think we probably need to, through the HCPUA, at least our communities, and maybe throughout with working with Austin and the other communities, do a better job of explaining, that the planning and the infrastructure and those things you have to pay for up front, so that we don't run out of water and that we can address the quality of that water. those things, we need to do those things now so that, the 50 years from now, we're not all sitting around, turn the tap on and having air come out.
That's really an important point that needs to be touched on. You brought it up. But if you're in elected office, you're going to hear about affordability a lot, especially these days. It's sort of the catchword of the decade right now. But with regard to electricity and water, the impacts that we're seeing, we're in the middle of our budget process right now. And what we're seeing is that our electric rates and our water rates are going up more than a property tax rate. People are very concerned about that. And so it actually has to be talked about a lot. First, I'm going to talk about water. Water for us, for the city of Austin, the raw product is free. We don't pay anything for that. We did pay $100 million in advance back in 1999, but right now we're not paying anything. We have 150,000 acre feet run of the river that we'll never have to pay for. Everything above that, we're about 160 or 170,000 acre feet right now. We're not paying for that and won't pay any additional money until we get a little over 200,000 acre feet, and that's several years away. So why is your bill going up? Well, since you're not paying anything for raw product, what you are paying for is the infrastructure that it takes to get the water from where it is, wherever it is in a reservoir, treat it and get it to your house so you can use it. So, and that costs the same, whether you use 10 gallons a month or 10,000 gallons a month, that cost to the utility is the same. So people say, well, I don't understand, your water rates are going up. The water rates are going up, and I did what you asked me to do. I conserve water, and now I'm being penalized for it. And frankly, that's exactly what's happening, because as we sell less water and process less wastewater, the cost per unit has to go up because the costs are basically all fixed. You got employee salaries and 4,000 miles of pipe and a bunch of treatment plants, and you got meters and all of those things that go into just bringing the first drop of water to your house or to your business. So I know that makes people unhappy, but it's a problem that we have to address and explain a little bit. And the utilities, energy and water, you're kind of bound. State laws require that when you provide a service, you don't charge more for that service than what it costs you to provide. And so, for example, if we talk about raising our electric rates, we basically have to justify that through a cost of service study. We just went through that a couple of years ago, and we hadn't raised our electric rates in 14 years, so we had an abnormally high jump to make up for that. But now we've put some cost containment policies in place that we're not going to raise our rates more than 2% a year from now on, for number one. And for number two, we're going to remain in the bottom 50% of the utility rate structure for the entire state of Texas, whether you're a public or a private utility. So we're a municipally owned energy company. We are protected by the state of Texas from any competition. That means nobody can come in and poach on our territory. But that's only good basically until the next legislative session. That could change. So we still have to operate those, the energy company and the water company, as if they were businesses, and charge fair rates, competitive rates, whether you're actually in competition or not. Affordability, again, those two factors, utility rates, directly impact affordability.
And you're curious as well about our regional communication among communities and among leaders. I think that was part of your question. I think Mayor Webster really did hit on a good point for our shared communities. We're immediate neighbors, Kyle being immediately to our north. So the HCPUA has been a magnificent collaboration to work on a shared need when it comes to water. When it comes to economic development, our Greater San Marcos Partnership has assisted us greatly in bringing both the counties of Hayes County and Caldwell County together with each of the municipalities involved there to work collectively to try to attract new business to San Marcos. And it's been a very successful partnership over these last few years, and we're thrilled to see what the Greater San Marcos Partnership is going to bring to us in the near future. From a transportation perspective, and Mayor Leffingwell can speak to this very well also, our relationship that we have with CAMPO, the Capital Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, has really brought a lot of community leaders from both municipalities and county governments together with other organizations that are trying to address our congestion issues, issues in regards to air quality, issues in regards to mobility throughout this entire region. And as was mentioned a while ago, there's a significant need, especially here in Austin and Travis County, but we're also seeing those needs in San Marcos, in Kyle, and giving us that platform and that format to be able to work together to use our collaborative strengths has helped quite a bit, and we still have a long way to go. And certainly our relationships that we have with our COG in the capital area, our planning organization as well. And I'll let Mayor Powell and Mayor Leffingwell speak to their involvement in those as well. I don't know if Mayor Webster's been involved in those just yet, but certainly as Mayor Powell was mentioning, we were hazing him. He's got plenty of opportunities in the future to be able to join us for more meetings. But
Plenty of meetings.
plenty of meetings to go. But the relationships that I think each of us have as individual municipal leaders has been tremendous. I know Lee and Matt and I have a great relationship. We reach out to one another for support, for encouragement, for just an understanding of challenges that each of us have faced. Not too long ago, Mayor Webster and I had an opportunity just to have a brief conversation in regards to an immediate emergency need in his community, and was seeking assistance from us, which was ready to go when needed. And so we've done our best as individual leaders as well to keep those lines of communications and to continue to nurture those relationships together also.
Mayor Guerrero mentioned CAMPO, and CAMPO is, in a nutshell, it's a bunch of city and county representatives getting together and divvying up federal transportation dollars. It's an oversimplification, but that would get you pretty close. I've always had the philosophy that regional cooperation works best when you have kind of a core set of goals. I think of it kind of like a liberal arts education. There's the core classes that you have to take, and there are certain core issues in the greater Austin area in Central Texas that Austin can't address on its own, that Cedar Park can't, that Kyle can't, etc. Something like, take I-35. There isn't a square inch of I-35 that falls in the city of Cedar Park, so why should I care? Well, I-35 is the main vein through the body of Central Texas, and if it's not flowing, then commerce isn't flowing, and right now it's not. And so, it shouldn't come as any surprise that Cedar Park has taken a very strong position that regionally we would like to see more money diverted to I-35, especially through the downtown corridor. Because, yes, we have Cedar Park people that work in Austin, but in a much greater sense, we need the region to work. Because none of us are going to thrive without again, those core things working. At the same time, once those core things are addressed to some extent, it's up to the cities then to make smaller individual decisions on what is best for them individually. Austin's got rail on the ballot. People say, "What's my position?" I don't have a position. That is Austin and Travis County's decision, and that's outside of those core big things, fixing I-35, fixing MOPAC. And again, I'm speaking from a transportation perspective. Then those cities are going to make those individual decisions. We've been very focused on roads in Cedar Park. We like to build roads as wide and as safe as possible. And there's a big story in the Austin American-Statesman today that we just broke ground on the largest transportation project in our history, our big east-west corridor. We've been building a bunch of stuff on it. If you go there 10 years ago, there was very little. Now there's a number of hotels, there's a Costco, there's a hospital, there's a 900,000 square foot retail space, and there's a ton of businesses, and a number of them dealing in tech and clean energy, that are suddenly using that corridor, and it's gone from a kind of a sleepy road to where it's jammed up all the time. And so we're trying to get out in front of that. It's a project that probably could have waited another 5 years, but it probably would have been too late by that point. So we got creative. We We worked with Williamson County. We worked with TxDOT to figure out the financing to help us get out in front of it. And we're building that road before it hits the critical mass. A lot of the folks in Travis County think that Williamson County is a little nuts with how we build roads. At one of the recent Campo meetings, I had someone from Austin, no one elected, come up to me and said, "You guys are crazy. You guys built up the Parmer-Reagan corridor. You built 30 miles of road before it was really needed." And I said, "Yeah, that's kind of what we do." But it's great because once those roads get built, guess what? People use them, and it relieves congestion elsewhere. So I love the idea, on water. When Mayor Leffingwell and I had breakfast not too long ago, we were talking about, you guys know what your water needs are, we know what our water needs are, but it can create a lot of confusion if Austin's saying 1 day a week, and this city's saying 3 days a week, and this city's saying, I don't care, water when you want. It's not to say that we should all get huddled in a room and say 1 day a week, Wednesday, okay, good, break. But at the same time, the residents feel some inequity there, and it's nice if it's feasible to try to get on the same page there. And to a large extent, we've been able to do that. And let me quickly praise Mayor Leffingwell. I told a lot of people when we were, because we've gotten together several times to meet, it's amazing the cooperation between the suburban communities and the city of Austin, and a lot of that has to do with Mayor Leffingwell. We had a what should have been a small thing, and it ended up being that way. We saw some feasibility in doing a little land swap. There was a piece of Austin that kind of jutted into Cedar Park where we had put down a bunch of infrastructure, and there was a piece in Cedar Park where Austin had put down some infrastructure. So what would make sense? Swap, right? Well, back in the good old days, that probably would have been done with pistols at dawn. But in fact, our staffs worked together. We figured out it was mutually advantageous, and it was taken care of through a couple of, easy city council votes. So that's the new reality here, and I really hope it continues.
Can I have a quick follow-up?
Yes, please.
So the theme that I've heard, it's really interesting to me because I was a city councilman in the mid-2000s, and now I stepped out. I wasn't involved at all. Back then, things were very colloquial, very self-interested. The communities were not acting collaboratively. And what I've heard just now from Mayor Powell is that, an emphasis on unselfishness. That hey, we see the regional need in I-35. We're working together. We're part of the San Marcos partnership as well in terms of economic development. And I think what we've seen is the suburban communities around Austin mature. And really, I think the leadership and the staffs and all these organizations are starting to view things much more in a much more regional way. I mean, my economic development perspective in 2003 was, I don't want San Marcos to get it, I don't want you to get it, I want us to get it. Well, I have a much broader, I think, and much more mature perspective on that now, which is, sure, I'd want it in Kyle, but I really want it. I want it in Austin. I want it in Hays County. I want it to go in San Marcos. The development, because the people of my community, people that I'm elected to represent, are going to benefit from those improvements and the economic development and transportation improvements throughout the whole region. And so that snapshot that I have, is it just listening to this it's really good to see, because I just think I really am experiencing that new, and so a lot's happened in 10 years, and it's good. So.
If I could just share just one last comment as well. I think the philosophy that this corridor has certainly felt and began to implement and express is that a rising tide will lift all ships. And our collaborations, our relationships that we have, what we're trying to accomplish from a regional perspective is going to be so valuable to all of our residents and all of our business owners that are trying to make good things happen for their communities. And so I think we've been very fortunate, and we've learned from one another over a number of years, over plenty of great leadership.
Let me just say that Campo, I think, is a good template for regional cooperation. The body has about 20 members and includes representatives from 6 different counties. Every city in the region that has over 50,000 population is entitled to a seat on that once they reach that population threshold. But that is potentially the kind of template that we could use for other regional issues like energy and water conservation and so forth. I want to mention a quick thing about transportation because I'm losing the opportunity because I think we're running out of time. Our transportation initiative called Project Connect is a regional. It touches all 5 counties. And there's a different component. It also recognizes that not only is mass transit needed, but roads are needed too. And that's why the item, Proposition 1, that'll be on the ballot in November, will include $600 million for a rail project, but it also includes $400 million for road projects around the entire region. Most of that money is spent on, road money will be spent on Interstate 35, which will help, obviously, the entire region is concerned about that as being one of the most congested. I believe it's the most congested roadway in Texas if not for, let's see, I believe I read last week that Loop 610, West Loop 610 in Houston had now gotten worse than I-35. So if that's the case, I'll acknowledge that. But it is very important. We're not going to, roads are appropriate in some places. Mass transit is the best solution in others, whether that be rail or bus rapid transit. And we've got to attack this particular problem in a regional and multimodal way.
Thank you, and we're about out of time. Are there any final thoughts from anyone else?
I just want to say I came down here on the commuter rail, and it was jam-packed, standing room only from Kramer Station. I love the rail. And my question is, though, about, we talked about water a lot, we talked about distributed generation for electricity. What about distributed water? Rainwater systems, gray water reuse and irrigation, and then also even decentralized black water, sewage treatment, composting toilets and the like.
Let me say, the only thing I mentioned in our conservation plan was irrigation limitations, but there's a broad spectrum of measures like that, and it includes conservation measures like water reuse. It includes rainwater collection and things. It even includes a requirement on new turf areas, not on existing, but it addresses minimum soil depth. For example, new turf areas are going to require a minimum of 6 inches for residential and a minimum of 8 inches for commercial. We even talked about dentist equipment in there, how as dentists replace their old equipment, they're going to have to replace it with more water efficient equipment. I mean, that's just an example of the detail it went to. There's a whole range of things. We have a robust water reclamation plan in progress right now. We have reservoirs. We have a major main that goes down Red River Strait and serves the University of Texas and other places.
And the city of San Marcos has done similar adjustments to our ordinance as well to be able to accommodate for alternative uses of rainwater as well. So.
Mayor Webster?
I mean, you spoke to, why not have, collaborative regional projects? I mean, San Marcos and Kyle actually, we actually get some water from you and we collaborate there. We've talked about the partnership that we formed. I think the issue around, electricity is regulated at the state level, and it's I don't want to call it rationed, but it's essentially, it's managed at the state level. Water is, there's a long history in the state of water being very compartmentalized, and it's hard to, it's not impossible, but it's difficult to overcome those things. I mean, and so, I have 3 water suppliers in our community, and they have ownership rights, and we don't share water with them, and so it's actually a real issue. There's opportunities to do that, but there's actually a part of what we're dealing with here is a legacy, the way water rights are owned, and so overcoming that at the state level is something that I think you see from time to time in legislative sessions. It's just a very difficult political challenge. But as neighbors, we're working together. As a region, we're working together, and somebody does something good like Austin did, with their water conservation ordinance, we model that. And so I think, did you mention you had a shared wastewater treatment facility. So I mean, you know, they've got, I mean, so there is some of that going on. There's opportunities to do more of it. I'm certainly willing to have those kind of conversations, and I think they are too.
I promised the mayors that we would end at 11 o'clock. They have very busy schedules. They all have appointments immediately after this. I want to thank you for your time today and coming, and thank you for all the work that you're doing for our region. Thank you.
Thank you. It was good seeing you, sir.